I would like to talk to you about hunting malware in process behavior, or using process behavior. So we start by the end with the demo, and then I am going to present to you the problem, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to cope with hunting processes. So allow me to sit down because the demo is big throughout the presentation, so I'll be more comfortable than sitting. I have two virtual machines here that you can see on the screen. The first virtual machine with the Windows 10 operating system, this Windows 10 machine has installed an antivirus system updated to the last versions with patches and last definition of patches that have been installed in this machine. In the other machine, if it wants to start, so the other machine has an advanced attack tool, Strike. So this machine on the right represents an advanced attack machine, Cobalt, that could be updated by a PT group. Any PT group uses this kind of tools. So the victim machine, the victim we are trying to attack actually, has a Windows 10 operating system with Symantec. It can be Symantec or any other antivirus with all the abilities, anti-spyware, antivirus, etc. So I have no problem against Symantec. It's the first antivirus I chose and I installed, but you could say and apply everything that I say to any antivirus. So I'm going to infect the Windows 10 machine with a beacon of Cobalt Strike. So the bug that will communicate to Cobalt Strike, which is the Cobalt control, and we are going to control remotely. Even if the two machines are there, imagine they are on the internet. So remotely, we're going to infect Windows 10 with Cobalt Strike. So I have a document with the malicious information, and inside there's the Cobalt Strike beacon. If everything worked well, the attacking machine should be connected to the victim machine. Now we are having Symantec executing. I am not against Symantec again. It could have been any other antivirus system. What I want you to see now, and I'm going to reduce the size of the image for you to see better. Okay, now here. So we are going to start interacting with beacon, and we're going to say, first of all, sleep 0 so that we can make requests to arrive faster. Otherwise, there's 60 seconds of beacon. Every 60 seconds, we have command and control information being asked. And I would like you to pay attention to the process chain that is generated when an attacker conducts an action. So, very simple action or activity now. For example, this is the machine. This is when what we see here is the malicious process that has in the memory the beacon Cobalt injected, the one that is making the communication, that is communicating basically. So we're going to say shell, so we execute ping -c and 20. So this is a recognition command the attacker is doing. It's not loop back, but I'm doing loop back for you to see how in the victim machine there's a hierarchy of specific processes. So we execute the ping, and we have WinWord here. SMD is depending on that, and then the executing of ping. So this could be done by a malicious actor, which is not very clever because son of WinWord has fm.x for a blue team or for an agent that is surveilling anomalies in processes. This agent could be identified that there's a malicious software trying to carry out malicious activities. I want you to see another capability of Cobalt Strike. In my opinion, this is really frightening because from a defense point of view, it's extremely complicated to capture this. The ability is the parent process of the actions you're going to conduct is not your real. The parent process should be another one. That's what you want the process to be. So if we edit processes, maybe a pen tester in the room could say, yeah, if it just arrived in the victim equipment because of phishing or because the equipment is there and it wants to go unnoticed, how would the malicious activities be using first? What process would be using first? Explorer. Very well. Explorer is going to live forever because it's the shell of the user. It's going to be executing permanently, and actions go unnoticed because it seems it is the user doing them or carry out them. So execute process 3840. So we have 3840 here. Now we say spawn to. So spawn 2 and the ancillary processes are not going to be ancillary processes of the actions you carry out, but I don't want you to generate a ping, but a UMI, real process, real disk, for example, Excel, that is going to be executed as a dependent of Explorer. And within that, we are going to edit the malicious process. So in the process hierarchy, we are going to see Explorer executing an Excel, but in reality, we are executing a malicious process. Okay, Explorer, file loads. So files, Microsoft Office. Office again, copy. It's spawned to x86 because we need to establish the architecture, paste, and then we write excel.exe. So it's a WinWord. Don't forget we are in the memory space of WinWord. So the parent is Explorer and the spawn is going to be an Excel. So what is the malicious activity? We want to execute a .NET thing, which is the goal is to get the hashes of the machine. And to do that, we are going to use an application, execute an application of an attack that is called internal monologue. Right, route, desktop, microbal dest, assembly, and within assembly, internal monologue. So we are going to execute this Excel, and it's going to be injected within the memory space to be executed. I don't know if you can see that, but can you see the Excel file here, down there? Well, it disappeared. Who told Excel that has to do that? WinWord as a dependent of Explorer. So we have the user hash here. Okay? Very well done. So from a defense point of view, from a hunting point of view, how the heck do we fight against that? How can we discern a legitimate process and a non-legitimate process? Because in the end of the day, what we're going to see in the machine registry is that things are executed with Excel, and this is extremely complicated. So we find actors in front of us that work in memory, so they don't work with files and disk. They work in the memory without having artifacts. So we have actors that use the legitimate process of the equipment to execute actions. We also have that they might be injected within processes without creating threats, with the APC techniques. so there's no threat. So their malware is executed only in the victim equipment. So it is executed there, and it works only for that machine. And above all, they replace the hierarchy of processes. So how do we fight against that? It's extremely difficult. So what comes to mind are 3 hunting strategies to be able to identify this kind of behavior. First of all, creating temporary correlation of events. For example, T0 an event, T1 replication, so it might be malicious. We can have a second. We can also have a second approach, the process hierarchy. That's the first example we saw. For example, when WinWord created a CMD type process and then executed a ping, or will log on and GMD is the typical attack. So this hierarchy might help us to identify malicious actions. And another strategy we can implement is compartmentalizing our baseline. So we can understand how normal process work, WinWord, for example, in a normal way, and when they behave differently, an alert is launched, which requires studying each of the processes of the system, the typical process of the system, and it requires to identify patterns so that when abnormalities happen, the alert is set off. So how do we start identifying what processes of the machine do in order to implement these strategies? So we can start to monitoring and instrumentalizing these processes. So we can use free of charge Sysmon, which is a Microsoft SysInternal instrument to identify process creation actions or connection of processes or executions of registries or actors in the registry when a PI is created. So a series of monitoring actions that will allow us to create baselines or attack this process hierarchy and be able to identify malicious activities in process chains. The problem is that this monitoring of Sysmon at this point in time are atomic events, though there are no relation between them. A process is created, a connection is created, something is written, but there's no correlation between them. And that's a problem. So in order to detect these actions of Cobalt Strike, for example, we need to correlate all these events. And this is what I wanted to share with you today. And I developed an application to correlate Sysmon events with 2 capabilities. The first capability is to detect anomalies due to hierarchy of processes, like we said before, WinWord. And the second detection engine is base behavior. So we have been studying heuristically all the processes, and we created a database of all the processes of the system and how they behave. Explorer, for example, and how Explorer works with Sysmon. So we studied each action. This is used for what? The correlator read from Sysmon files, the VTX or oh, I have to be in the spotlight. This is what I'm told, says the speaker, for you to see me. So it can read Sysmon setup files or from staying at demo mode and read processes and correlate and alert about risks. What is this used for? For hunting processes. When we are working with an organization and we have a fleet of teams of equipment, and we have many things that have been installed, and we want to conduct a hunting process to detect malicious actors. And this is useful also to get more information due to behavior, meaning we have another layer of behavior. So we can use it to determine previous rules. The correlator has some correlation rules and a packet, and this correlation rule packets detect some risks, but if new hunts or risk situations come to mind and you want to include this in the list, you can test it and you can use the correlator afterward to identify it, and it allows you to find VTX files and, for example, list all files called X, and it is provided by the correlator. So let's see the two engines. The first engine is the baseline engine. This engine does as follows. The process is as follows. Whenever an action occurs, a Sysmon action occurs, it is tested against a behavior database. And it says this action is normal. If it is normal, nothing is done. And if this action is not done normally, the trust is reduced of the process. 10 points of a trust in the process. So if the process is not normal, a deduction of points is carried out. For example, the behavior is very strange due to that, and you can know why. So this is the behavioral part. With this engine, we detect the second example of the demo I showed to you before. So the parent is Explorer and the daughter is Excel. So Excel is not behaving as an Excel file. There's no Excel process open. The Excel process is dead. So this is the main goal. So this is the diagram. So Sysmon lead, the Sysmon ID is enter, so no problem, no alert. But if the action is not regular, points are deducted. If points were deducted, alert. No points are deducted, no alert. So this is something, I mean, this is applied to an Explorer model. So Explorer for the ID1 is the Sysmon creation process. The behavior should be done. For communication, this formula should be this one. Let me show you an example of a normal behavior or Explorer. So this is absolutely normal for Explorer.exe. So this is the regular Windows environment when we operate Windows. So when is Windows normal? So this is implemented by the engine. It is executed at any moment. We can have an Explorer when a user logs in. The life cycle, it's long, not only for seconds. It is being executed as the user has logged in. So short periods of time is rare. Creation of daughter processes, well, regular, but no more than 20. Execution instances. So we are going to have one execution instance per user session. So if we have many users, we are going to have X Explorer per session. But we will not have two Explorers, which is rare, unless a special probability is indicated in the case you marked it. So there's no more than two Explorers. You will always have at least two, or minimum one, but you can have two. That's what I mean. So the image, the Disco image is here. Notice Windows System 32 here. The parent normal processes are those ones. User init, the regular one, will log on when a crash happens. If the Explorer crashes, there's a watchlog that is raised, and the watchlog that is risen is WinLogin. That is the parent. Another Explorer launched it. Very rarely this happens. And then SVC host, which is parent when we define this in the file we preset before. And that's it. No more parent. And we shouldn't have more parents than that. than those. It is executed on C point windows. So the user should be different always than system, and the session is always different than 0. So C sessions 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are the sessions users log in or log on the machine. So we cannot have a session 0 Explorer because Explorer is not a service. Also, integrity. The integrity of execution of the process is average. So we cannot have a high integrity Explorer when you bypass this other process. So we don't have an elevation to high integrity. The PE header, we need to have Window Explorer, the company. I don't want to be boring, but there is a set of normal events. And if you want to know what normality means in this regard, you can download your presentation because everything explained. File creation, connection, and how everything has to behave. I think it's important to know if Explorer connects or not. No, very rarely, 1, 2 a day, and connection to Microsoft. If we have more connections, that is strange. If Explorer is making more connections, you should look this out. So for each element, for example, downloading, where is it done? Remote, creation of remote threads, etc. So we are making a follow-up of a regular behavior if a pi is created or if a pi is connected, etc. So I'm going to show you all this on a demo. So let's start the correlator and let's see Google, and let's see if we are able to identify this or not. Okay, let's go back to the demo. Because we already interacted, to have a clean log, I'm going to restart. So we can close this session. Or if you want, we can kill it. No problem. Okay, again. This is the system again, and it's clean. Let's execute this so that it connects to command and control. And this is the correlator. The correlator is Python, written in Python. And I put the verbose mode for you to see how actions are detected and how points are deducted. So abnormalities and anomalies and how points are subtracted. So it's hooked again, interaction, sleep 0. So we become interactive with the system, and from WingWord we're going to inject into the memory space of the Explorer. So we are going to put a Cobalt beacon within the memory sector of Cobalt. We are going to list the process for you to know the processes. 3480 is in this, for this case, if I'm not mistaken. Inject 3480. So one more second. Yes, Explorer 3840. So again, Explorer 3840. Very well. What do we want to inject? HTTP beacon or something else? An HTTP beacon. So let's see here. Explorer subtracting 30 points due to action. So we deducted 30 trust or confidence point because something did something malicious. When you inject into the process, you open a remote process, and what you do is copy the malicious malware and you create a thread for the code to be executed. So you receive the creation of a thread, and Explorer does not receive thread creation, so we subtracted already 30 points. So beacon in Explorer, so we are within the Explorer space. Let's interact with the Explorer space. So sleep 10, sleep 0, actually, I'm sorry, for this to be faster. And we are going to see that when sleep is activated, more connections are done because there's a beacon that was injected. So this is something abnormal in terms of an action. So this is something not normal that and the correlator should take this into account. You see that on the screen? So we subtracted 20 points due to action 3, which is a Sysmon connection action. So many connections happened. Many connections were made. So I restart for you to see that.
And now, immediately, as you see here, we're going to check what we've done before. We tell here, Excel Explorer file. We're going to create the Excel process to inject again the internal monologue. Settings, files, Microsoft Office, Office 15, copy, okay. So now, what you're going to create as Excel files. Excel.exe. We're going to execute what we've done before. For example, one internal monologue, execute assembly fruit, and we have these Symantec somewhere. Now, assemblies, internal monologue, we execute internal monologue, boom, okay? Now what the correlator has told us, let's take a look to it. Let's see what they've told us. Alert, alert, too many odd things. Minus 10 points, you've done too many odd things. Now you've been deprived. A threat, minus 30 points, windward. That could be the origin. Too many connections, and this defined interval. I've defined this interval if there are very many connections along one day, more than 12, it rings a bell. It's configurable. This binary, the interval is within 1 hour, 30 connections. You define this. Then, last but not least, you have created here this pipe, minus 60 points. And then, why do you need this pipe? To get results, to retrieve results from the internal monologue, from the way in and out, redirect this, and to read it and to present this onto the interface. Too many odd things, too many peculiar things. Then we're going now to test another thing. We're here inside the memory space of Explorer, but if we used it as a process, we're using Excel. The process that we were trying to cheat if it were Explorer. The one who would like to deceive, let's see what happens. We would tell them now, no. Instead of having this #2, we're going to have another Explorer. Process Windows, Explorer.exe. And then here we tell, we're going to execute again the internal monologue. To give you an example, we could do something else. That's the example. And it did ring a bell in a different way. There is a different alert, a different alarm. We have been told that 3580 is Explorer, that is not the previous one. The previous one was 3840. Remember, that's another one. It was created by this dummy. What's been detected? The correlator told us someone has created a process in the Explorer, and then this process had terminated too soon, too early, too short-lived. In general, they should live for 20 seconds. That's a normal thing you start your machine. The Explorer is created and then you switch it off and the Explorer dies 20 seconds. This Explorer did last for 55, so it's minus 10 points because of lack of confidence, and the process was killed without creating, without getting connected to a pipe, without having network connections, without reading disks, and without creating not a single process. In general, they should do this, but the process ended without doing anything, and we're depriving this from confidence. And then in the end, they say, that's spooky, it's not correct, it's not behaving the way it should. Then that's the part of what the identification part will be, baseline identification. But also, we might identify this, as we said in the beginning, according to correlations, parental and children correlation. We have this example that is a good example. We have the Outlook. The Outlook is creating us children process, Microsoft Word, connected to the internet, creating a CMD. That's a typical phishing. That's impersonating. A dropper here, and then it's been executed. That's the file of correlation rules we can have with the correlator we've defined. Let's see what happens. Each line represents the creation of a process hierarchically. In the hierarchy, the parents. Firstly, it's this type of process. We have Outlook, we have Thunder, whatever. Then it's been created a process, Office process, Excel, Access, etc. And then this process is performing a type 3, which is a connection to the internet, and immediately and beneath this hierarchical approach, they execute a PowerShell, CMD script, double script, that set. The C here means that beneath this hierarchy, it shouldn't be direct hierarchy. It shouldn't. The children is not cmd.exe. If there is a lolbing here, if it were children, parents, they were having a bypass of the rules. So here, beyond this hierarchical approach, it depends. It doesn't matter. If you have a CMD, then we're covering many cases with only one rule. It's a phishing attack, impersonation. We could do it in a more generalizable way. All Office process that in the end is underlying creating other processes getting connected to the internet. That's anomalous. The attacker would say, we'll create a law ban and not to make suspicious aspects, then we'll download the malicious artifact. We say it depends on Office, whomever gets connected. Other correlation rules we could create, for instance, to detect when, due to the code injections, processes are failing. Because normally, many times, attackers are not perfect. When they inject in the memory space, something is crashing. So we're identifying here some children of WinIt, some services that repeat actions more than twice a day. Action is creating a process, and then we have, as a child, this binary. When a process is crashing, it is going to be created to send a report to Microsoft. It's what you have. Would you like to send a report to Microsoft? If it happens more than twice, that means it rings a bell. It's triggering an alert. And then here, for instance, we've seen this before. If Explorer is crashing for whatever, then the parents will be different, will log on And if it's created more than 3 times, that means something wrong's taking place. The user, if that collapses, he sees that Explorer is again and again appearing, again and again starting. And there could be malicious actions injecting codes, other interesting things, a process, system process that is in this user session. That is not normal. For instance, we have here in a session, user session, different from the 0-1 where you have the services. In this user session, we have one process from a system user. And this is possible. It's stealing tokens and creating then processes. If you take the token from a system process, session 1, it's a log on. That's the one who's taken the token, stealing the token to impersonate and create a process, a system, as if it were a system. Is this a process? That is not system. Creating a process as if it were system. It is a process that is the user process. It is strange. You have an access here. The access on behalf of a user process access to opening the memory space of a system process to look for the token. This action is odd, and we identify this with this level, but Sysmon is not able to tell us who the users are and the sessions and users. We correlate this if a process comes from one process without privileges to another, and they open memory space to read the token. That is a system process. That's odd, because probably what you're going to do is you're stealing tokens. We'll have a token, and we'll see here a demo to see how it works, the hierarchical aspects. Let's see now how it works. We're going to start the correlator without verbose. And we're going to start from Explorer. From Windward. We're going to delete Explorer. And what the attacker will do is the attacker arrive with Windward, and we have to scale up privileges, because the process in this case, if we interact with the process, we have this shell. Who am I? That's one of the first things the attacker. It is who he is, where he is, if it is administrator or not, and the integrity level the attacker has. Windward here, the user, puller, belongs to administrators. Well, the attacker is perfect, but it is with medium integrity. Integrity is medium level, so it's not able to conduct privileged actions. If we want to see get priv, there are just a bunch of privileges. We cannot do many things. We need to scale up privileges. And then we're going to use Symantec is around here, I think, to enhance privileges with this attack, which is the token duplication attack. Token duplication allows us to enhance from medium to high integrity. But there is a small problem. Not yet. It's impossible to give us all the privileges we would like to have. It's a set debug privilege which will open the memory space and will be injected, and this will become, in the end, a system. Nowadays, we have here high integrity. What is what we need, yes? We have high integrity, and we're going to interact with this, with high integrity beacon. And here we have, it's as if I were selling this, but I came to talk to other things. Talk about other things. We put it at 0, the interaction, to speed it up. And when a privilege will be seen, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to see the privilege we have. In spite of the high integrity, the attack didn't give us very important privileges. What we're going to do now is to steal the token to steal the token of a process that has more privileges, and then we're going to steal the 5520. We get this token, we steal as a explorer process, and we see the privileges. Now we have privileges. It is a set debug privilege. We're going to inject us here 757. Inject at 756, sorry, with this token. And as we see, we have become system. We are now completely what has been detected by the correlator. Let's look at this. Correlator, the first thing he tells us is, well, there are lots of alarms triggered. The correlator is telling us that a process has been created, and it was created by an injected thread. So that means that the process has created a thread into another process, and threads as processes will have identifier thread ID, and this thread ID, this injected thread, had created a process afterwards. That is a typical scheme of an injection and interaction. Then the correlator is able to know who is the one conducting the action. Explorer had created a process, but it was windward, the one having conducted, performed this injection. What else? They are alike, so there is a malicious office document, so windward generating CMDs, bizarre, and the password also. It's been detected that this medium integrity process had created a high integrity process. It's not normal. When you scale up with walk, it's not the process that's elevating the one that will create. The process has been created by Explorer. If you have a CMD, you open a CMD. The parent is Explorer and the child is CMD. You say CMD as an administrator being executed around, it is Explorer. The father, the parental relation is Explorer. So it's impossible from a medium level to create high integrity. And it's been detected that a process that is not a system, and that is, as a user session is opening the space, memory space, to read the token of a system process here. Impossible. So, as we see here, we're able to identify actions of injections, of movements among different processes that are very difficult, and we can see this with Sysmon as a tool and with the correlation layer, the correlator. The correlator, you have it for free. We're going to publish this, and the libhub 52, and this could be used to hunt or to see who the bad guy is within your organization. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you. Thank you, Roberto. Would you kindly ask questions? If you have questions, use the microphone. Thank you. Yes. Hello. I have a question that's a simple one. Those integrity points, the integrity points we are depriving the user from. If I, for instance, have minus 10, will they recover? No, it's always minus, 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 less, less, and less. But we could add this capacity if, after a certain period of time, nothing wrong has been done, go back to the initial position. The value you're depriving this is according to the anomalous situation. So if it is a very small thing and then nothing else, I'm going to trust you again. The algorithm is not like this yet, but it could be like you say, yes, in the future. Those items are kept within a file. If we restart the device to stop the counter from restart or resetting values, yes, it can be stored. More questions comments? Hello. I have a question regarding how could we pass answers from the correlator onto a sim, because we could have different ways of taking the data. I didn't explain this. The correlator is writing, if you have a wing log bit or whatever technology you have to get working files, logs, you do it. It writes to this application Sysmon correlator, and you have it. So you don't have to do anything. No, nothing. With a log bit, you can read it and you can take it. Yeah, of course. Thank you. Hello, Roberto. Congratulations. I'd like to say it's a fantastic application. It looks great. If we have the infrastructure where we have focused and we have centralized all the Sysmon in one machine, and I have a correlator, will the correlator be able to identify processes from different machines? The engine is ready for getting from different machines, the input from different machines. I don't know, you have the VTXs, or how the information is organized. Well, Windows event collector connected to the central machine. This will go to the operational thing. Yeah, but if you have the machine name, yes, the engine stops according to each machine. So it's ready for that. More questions, comments? Congratulations for this, Roberto. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. And now we're going to continue with the next speaker.